Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at all of the new and recently updated radar detectors. Now in this video, I also want to do something a little bit different. Because it's the beginning of 2020, I actually want to talk about everything that we know, kind of what we can expect going into this year. So all of the new radar detectors that are going to be coming out, we actually have quite a bit of information now as far as new updates and new radar detectors that are going to be coming out, whether there's something brand new from existing manufacturers or even something I don't normally talk about is some of the European radar detectors that are being released are either doing something really interesting and cool, and some of them, not all of them, but some of them are also going to be releasing their radar detectors here in the United States. And so we're going to be talking about some of the things that you can expect to be coming out down the line as well. Now there's, as always, going to be a ton of information down in the video description. So links to more information about all these detectors, any of the firmware updates that I talk about if you want to download it for your detector, where to purchase the detector, any of the test results, additional discussion on the forums, all that kind of stuff will be all downlinked down below. Now, with that said, let's just dive right into it. So starting off, Uniden has released firmware 1.29 for the R7. Now, firmware 1.29 brings a lot of changes and improvements to the R7. There's things like improved MRCD detection range, the GPS lockouts have been made safer. You now have the option of dialing back the rear antenna sensitivity if you happen to get a lot of false alerts from behind. You have more control of the detector in that way. There's actually quite a few changes and improvements in 1.29. Auto lockouts have not been added though, presumably because of the pending lawsuit with Escort. Now I'm going to be doing a video going over all of the changes and updates and everything after I finish shooting this one, but I've got all the information already posted on my website, so you can go ahead and take a look at it there in the meantime. Plus the firmware update was released early to RDF members, so I'll link to the post on RDF as well, where you can download the firmware update. Uniden's currently updating their manual and documentation and everything, and they plan on releasing the firmware update publicly next week, but you can go ahead and download the update now from the forums or from my website. Next, the Radenso Pro M radar detector was recently updated to firmware US 19. This update adds a bunch of new alert tones, 15 to be specific for all of the different radar and laser alerts. So now you can go in and actually customize the different alert tones to choose the sounds that you like best. We got this update first on the Radenso RC M custom install detector, and now the same update is available here on the windshield mount Pro M. Now speaking of the RCM, this was recently updated to firmware US 24. US 24 fixes a bug with muting KA band alerts. There's a bug fixed with muting locked out alerts, and apparently they fixed an issue with updating the firmware, but some people are actually still reporting issues. And if you go to update to US 24 and you see error displayed on screen, go ahead and update again. The display on the RCM will be turned off, but keep the USB drive plugged in, power on the detector and let it update itself in the background, and then it should fix the issue. So something to be aware of with this latest update we're seeing with the RCM. If you need any help with the update, hop on to the RDF discussion thread. I'll link to that down in the video description as well, and that'll help you guys get updated there. Now with Radenso Theia, there's obviously everybody's wondering about that. That I think is going to be the big news for 2020. We still don't know exactly when it's going to be coming out this year or the expected price, but that's a detector that's still very much in development. I'm definitely excited about testing it when it's available, and you better believe I'll be testing it as soon as it's available. I'll be posting information here on YouTube, on my website, on Facebook, pretty much everywhere, so definitely stay tuned for that. Radenso in the meantime has actually been posting some information on their social media channels as well as some YouTube videos. They posted one the other day actually showing their supercomputer that they're using for training the artificial intelligence for Theia. So if you want to see kind of some of the behind the scenes as they're doing the development, I'll link to that video as well. Now, speaking of Theia, for those of you who run a BlendMount to attach your radar detector under the rearview mirror, BlendMount has a waiting list that's available now so that you can sign up so you can actually get the clip, the connector, to connect it to Theia once you get your radar detector. So if you're running a BlendMount and if you want to get a Theia, video description as well, as like with everything else, so that you can hop on the waiting list and sign up to be notified as soon as the clips are available to connect Theia to your BlendMount. Moving on to Genevo. Genevo, they're a European radar detector brand, and they're actually the factory that Radenso uses to manufacture the Pro M and the RCM. Now, the European version of the Pro M is called the 1M, and the 1M was actually recently updated with a new radar detector called the Genevo Max. The Genevo 1M shares the same underlying platform as the 1M, but there's a new case, a new design, and some pretty cool new features here with the Max. For example, there's now a motion sensor in the front of the detector, so to mute alerts when they pop up, instead of pressing the button on top of the detector, you can just wave your hand in front of the detector and that'll silence the alerts for you. On the side of the detector, it now, instead of using a barrel connector like the 1M or the Pro M, it uses a standard RJ11 cable, and so now the power cable has a remote mute button, so you can also mute the detector now from the power cable. The side of the detector also adds a headphone jack, which is great for you motorcycle riders, and there's also now a USB Type-C port on the side to update the detector. It's not for powering the detector the way it's going to be for the Radenso Theia, but for updates, the USB Type-C port is now available instead of the micro or mini USB that all the other detectors use. Now, one of the big new changes, though, is a new mount. The new mount is available both for horizontal and vertical mounting of the radar detector, and so if you are living in a country where it actually benefits you to take your radar detector and rotate it 90 degrees, the radar detector now has a built-in mount that allows you to turn the detector without needing any sort of aftermarket third-party mounts. Plus, the new mount itself actually looks really similar to Escort's Easy Mag mount, used in the Redline EX, the Max 360C, etc. It looks like a really similar design. Speaking of Escort, I guess the name, the Genevo Max, is really similar to the Escort Passport Max, so you get similar naming there. Now, this I don't think is going to be coming to the United States, this new radar detector. If it was, maybe Radenso would want to sell it under their name. I've got a whole article on my website talking about the Max, and I actually talked to John, the president of Radenso, on RDF, and I kind of summarized a lot of the discussion on the article on my website, so I'll link to that if you want to take a look at that. But this is a pretty cool radar detector with the new horizontal and vertical mounting capabilities, the new motion sensor, things like that, but it's not actually planned on coming to the United States. Now, some of you guys in Europe who've already purchased the detector and have been testing it, you've been taking a look at it, and Genevo actually says the sensitivity of the Max should be better than the 1M, and this is what we're seeing against some of the maybe lower powered radar sources like the MRCD. It gives you longer alert range than the Genevo 1M does, but still not quite as good as maybe the Stinger VIP or the Uniden R7. There's some other testing that's been done as well against like maybe Ka-band, for example, so for more information, video description down for that. As far as the laser testing, people are finding the laser sensitivity as advertised is better than the 1M, but still not quite as good as maybe your Valentine One or your ALP, which are like the gold standards for laser sensitivity. Nevertheless, things like the motion sensor and the vertical and horizontal mounting styles, those are some cool new things that I haven't really seen in a lot of radar detectors actually built in. So it's just kind of something interesting that even though we're not going to be seeing it here in the US, I still wanted to share it with you guys. Now, on a similar note, I want to talk about a company called Neoline. They also make radar detectors used overseas in Europe and Russia, etc. And they're doing some pretty creative and interesting things as well, but they actually are working on development here for the North American market. So let's go ahead and quickly talk about them. Now, the first radar detector of theirs I want to talk about is the Neoline 9100S. This is a radar detector and dash cam combo unit. Now, Neoline radar detectors, they're built in the same factory as Genevo, though they're not always sharing the same exact platform and capabilities and whatnot. But the 9100S, for example, has multi-radar detection capabilities. The dash cam records at 1080p, full HD, and it's got a little micro SD card slot on the side. So they're working on kind of this whole radar detector dash cam combo thing, which I think is actually pretty cool to see. I like that more and more companies are working on this. Now there's also the Neoline 9200, and this one is actually pretty interesting as well. This one, instead of using a traditional horn antenna, it actually uses a patch antenna, which is what we see in radar detectors like the Stinger VIP. And some radar guns do this as well, like the custom Falcon HR, the Raptor RP1, or the Pocket Radar. The patch antenna is going to be much more compact and flat instead of actually sticking out like a horn. Something else that's pretty cool is the mount itself. The power connector is built into the mount, so you can easily remove the radar detector and plug it back in right from the mount. Plus the mount, it's actually reversible, so if you want to maybe pop the dash cam off and flip it on to record the inside of the cabin, this dash cam makes it super easy to do. Neoline has a bunch of other radar detectors as well, but those are two of the ones that I wanted to talk about real quick. Now, right now, they're actually doing their development here in the North American market. As I mentioned, they're used primarily overseas, and they have different cars and whatnot overseas. So the big issue right now is the BSM filtering that's necessary. It's not designed to filter out American cars, so you're going to get a ton of false alerts, which is some of the issues that I've seen before with international radar detectors that are being brought over here to the US. If they haven't been designed for our market, you get tons of false alerts. So I'm glad that Neoline is actually working on this. They had the 9100S listed on Amazon for a while for $500, so that gives us an estimated idea for pricing. But once it comes out, I would definitely like to take a closer look at this and just see how it compares to everything else. They're going to need to take care of some of the patent issues, things like GPS lockouts. If you want to use that feature, you're going to have to license it from Escort. So there are some details to work out and whatnot, but a lot of you guys have asked me about the Neoline radar detectors and dash cams, so I just wanted to do a quick blurb talking about them. Next, taking a look at Escort. It looks like Escort may be releasing a new detector that they're going to be calling the Redline 360C. If you take a look in the Windows version of Escort detector tools, Escort's update software, there's now a reference to a new version of the Redline called the Redline 360C. Now, I don't know for sure if this detector is actually coming. It may be a typo for all I know. It doesn't look like it, but I've got a separate video going over my thoughts of the Redline 360C of what that detector could be like, assuming it does come out. Once or if Escort officially announces it, I'll of course have more information. We'll be doing testing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it looks like there may be a new detector called the Redline 360C coming from Escort. Next, taking a look at K40. Now, K40 has a new radar detector that they're going to be releasing, and we actually saw the information sent out to the FCC. And if you take a closer look at some of the documentation, you'll see that they actually refer to it as the LNA remote. LNA, it stands for low noise amplifier. It's a little chip that you can put into the radar detector to make the radar detector more sensitive. It improves performance by making the detector, well, more sensitive. You get longer range. Cool. Now, if you take a look at K40's current offerings, whether it's the windshield mount RLS2 or the custom installed RL200DI or the dual antenna front and rear RL360DI, they all share the same exact underlying platform, whether it's the windshield mount or the custom installed, and believe it or not, they actually use the exact same platform as the $99 Uniden DFR5. If you open up both of the detectors side by side, you'll notice, first of all, the horns are actually exactly the same, whether it's the Uniden on the left and the K40 remote on the right. And then if you open it up even further and take a look at the RF circuitry, you'll notice they're exactly the same. The K40 products, again, they share the exact same circuitry, platform, and hardware as the Uniden DFR5. Obviously, there's some differences. They've got some different features. There's a different interface, you know, windshield mount versus custom installed unit, so different speaker and display and things like that. But in terms of the radar detector itself, it's actually the exact same thing, which when I found that out pretty recently, it actually explains a lot. That explains why their current radar detectors lag behind the competition, both whether you're looking at the custom installed radar detectors or you're comparing it to maybe some of the other windshield mounts. It also explains why there is some BSM filtering, or at least there was when I took a look at the RLS2, the windshield mount, back in 2015. I'm not totally sure how it actually compares to the current versions, but if it's a DFR5, there should be some BSM filtering, but not on par with the current competition. And it also explains why a lot of distributors and installers have said there's quite a bit of margin, profit, available in the K40 products. They're using pretty simplistic and basic hardware, so there's more margin, and they're able to pass that along to the installers. And so that's why I keep hearing time and time again that a lot of installers like the K40 products. Now, as far as the Uniden DFR5, again, that's a basic platform. Like a lot of the custom installed radar detectors, they share the same platform with some windshield mount variants. So for example, the NetRadar DSP, it's actually essentially a custom installed version of the same platform as what's used in the Uniden R3. The Radenso RC M is the same platform as the Radenso Pro M. There's some changes. The antenna, the horn is a little bit bigger because it's custom installed instead of a windshield mount. They have more room, so should have a little bit longer range, better sensitivity, but same platform under the hood. The Escort Max CI 360. That's a hybrid between the Escort Redline for range and the Max 360C with its newer digital platform for better BSM filtering. So, you know, Uniden R3, Radenso Pro M, Escort Redline, Max 360C. These are all high-end windshield mounts, and they're kind of using these same platforms in the custom installed units. With the K40, on the other hand, it's sharing the same platform as a budget radar detector, the Uniden DFR5. So that actually explains quite a bit about that detector. Now, that's a little bit of background, and K40, as I mentioned, they're actually going to be coming out with what they're referring to as an LNA remote. I don't know what the official name is going to be when it launches, but the Uniden DFR5 doesn't have an LNA, and if you were to add an LNA to it, you would get, well, the Uniden DFR7 or Uniden DFR9. That's actually the same platform, just with the LNA. DFR7, it's a $159 detector. I like the DFR7. I talk about it on the channel a lot, but I talk about it as a great kind of mid-priced budget detector. It's not a high-end detector, but it's a great bang for the buck if you're not wanting to spend, $500, $600, $700 on a high-end windshield mount. Now, I don't know if K40 for their custom installed unit, are they going to use the same exact platform and just add an LNA? It would make sense. It's the easiest thing to do, and it uses what they're already doing and just adding an LNA. That platform already exists. I've actually done some testing a couple years back with the Uniden DFR5 and DFR7, back when they were referred to as the LRD 750 and LRD 950. If you want to see more information about that, I actually have a whole article that I published on my website talking about why I don't recommend K40 products. And it kind of goes into more detail about how they use more simplistic hardware, both on the radar side and on the laser side as well, which explains the lack of performance that we see with K40 products. But I guess just quickly go over it. Yes, we should expect better performance from something like a DFR5 to DFR7, and if K40 just simply adds an LNA to their existing platform, we should see, again, better range than the current RL200DI and RL360DI, but still not on par with your Max CIs, your RCMs, your NetRadar DSPs, etc. But it is definitely good to see with K40 they're working on improving the performance of their product lineup. I'd love to test it, just put it on the same, lineup with everything else and just apples to apples. Let's test it against all the other radar detectors and see how it compares. If, I don't know if they will, but if they use the same exact platform and add an LNA, we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to turn out. But maybe they'll do some tweaks, maybe they'll do something all new altogether. So of course, testing itself is going to be the ultimate way to see how it actually performs in practice. But that's kind of my educated guess based on taking a look at stuff of what we can expect with the new K40 radar detector. Next, taking a look at the Valentine One. Now, the V1 has been unavailable for sale for the past over 9 months now. You haven't been able to order a V1. Valentine has been saying they're waiting on parts to come in, and there's been thousands and thousands of posts on the forums as far as speculation and discussion, and a number of us have actually called into V1, just kind of like, hey, what's the story? When are we going to be able to order one? I called in again maybe last week or so for an update, and they actually told me that they finally received the parts that they've been waiting on. So yay, thank goodness. They still have to do some testing, of course, with the new parts and make sure they work well and quality control and all that kind of stuff. They didn't specify exactly what the parts are, but it's great to see that finally we've got some progress, and the parts that we've been waiting on for months, or well, they've been waiting on, have finally started arriving. So hopefully we'll start to get a new V1 sooner rather than later, but there's still no ETA as far as when a new V1 would come out. Now, I asked him for some additional information, and again, that I've got a whole article on my website available as well. They said it should offer better performance, so longer range than the current V1, plus they're also going to be improving the BSM filtering, which is great to see as well. They told me that they're not going to be adding GPS to the newer version of the V1, a little bit of a bummer, but maybe sidestep some of the patent issues and whatnot. I asked them about some of the, maybe patents that we saw. I know there's a new radar detection platform. There's the possibility for a new display. They could change that up. There's things with cameras that they could do. There's all sorts of things that they've patented that they may or may not implement. So we'll ultimately have to see whether or not they do it, but they weren't able to let me know kind of things like that. I asked them, are you even going to be incorporating Bluetooth into the detector so we don't have to rely on external modules like the V1C or the V1CLE? The lady that I spoke with, very friendly by the way, didn't tell me if Bluetooth was going to be included. I'm certainly hopeful, but she wasn't able to confirm that. So at least it's good to see that there's a new V1 that's available. I asked them if there's any information maybe they wanted me to share with you guys, and they said for those of you who want updates, just head over to their website, make sure you're signed up for their mailing list, and they'll notify you as soon as a new V1 is available. I'll definitely post something here as well. I've got one on pre-order, so as soon as it comes in, I'll definitely have one in, be doing videos and testing and comparisons and talk about the differences and improvements. And so I'll obviously be doing my thing as well, but for information directly from Valentine, you can head over to their website and just get a heads up as far as when they have new information to share as well. Next, taking a look at the Stinger VIP radar detector, that was recently updated to version 4.10.07. Now, this new update, Stinger says it's an important update recommended for all Stinger systems using a computer center version 10 or higher. And it's got a number of different changes, such as some user interface and alerting enhancements, as well as some general bug fixes, such as some enhanced flash memory protection. So if you're running a Stinger VIP, sounds like a good idea to go ahead and update. Next, moving on to laser jammers. Let's start off by talking about the TMG laser jammer. So there's been news and rumblings about a new VPR head that they've been working on. It's kind of their equivalent to ALP's TX head that you can put in the center. It transmits only, it doesn't receive, but it helps improved jamming capabilities against some of the variable pulse rate guns, such as the Dragoneye gun. Well, we've got good news. Some test results are in, and they're already actually now listed on TMG's website. Now, taking a closer look at the new VPR head itself, it's the same size and shape and everything as the original heads, but the face of the head is actually completely flat. There's no little bubbles on the face of the head. Otherwise, the same dimensions and size and everything. The CPU, it's the same CPU itself, but it's actually going to be a new CPU, and if you take a closer look at it, you'll actually see that some of the ports are specifically labeled for VPR usage. So, for those of you wanting to upgrade to the new VPR heads, which I'll talk about in just a moment, you are going to need a new VPR-specific CPU, and of course you're going to need the new VPR heads themselves. Now, there's been a bunch of testing that's been going on as we're getting very close here to release. Now, the main issue that TMG has been wanting to address is specifically the fact that as you get closer to a Dragoneye gun, it loses the ability to continue jamming the gun. And so inside of maybe 300, 400, 500 feet or so, you start getting punch throughs, and that's specifically the issue that the new VPR head is designed to address. It's designed to give you jam-to-gun performance, and we are now seeing that. Well, the people who are testing, people who've tested it, I haven't tested one myself yet, but people who've been testing, they've tested with a variety of different Dragoneye guns, and they are seeing some improvement, but it's not fully jammed to gun. For example, against maybe the early 2018 Dragoneye guns, against the regular TMG, they were getting some punch throughs in the 300 to maybe 450 foot range. Now it actually goes fully jammed to gun, so awesome, great to see. Against maybe a late 2018 Dragoneye gun, they're still seeing punch throughs, even with the VPR head, around the 500 foot range. And against some of the maybe newer 2019 Dragoneye guns, it's actually going fully instant punch through with no jamming capabilities at all. So yes, we're seeing some improvements, but definitely not to the level, I guess, that I was hoping for. And they need to do some additional work to make sure they can jam all the latest guns as well, whether it's with the new VPR heads or not. Against the Stalker guns, the Stalker XLR and the RLR, TMG does a great job against those. It goes fully jammed to gun against those, both with the VPR heads as well as with the just regular G2 heads used with the TMG, the traditional one that's been available up to this point. And there's also an issue that people have found out with certain LTI guns to where sometimes you'll actually get punch throughs. And without going into too much detail as far as some of the changes that have been going on with the LTI guns, TMG, it looks like they do need to update their algorithm to, handle some of the new LTI guns. I know ALP has run into this issue and has had to release an update for it, and TMG would need to do the same thing as well. So I'll link to the full test results down in the video description, but the short version is, yes, we're seeing some improvements with the new VPR head. It is better than not having a VPR head, but it is not yet going fully jammed to gun against all the Dragoneye guns, whether it has the capability to recognize the pattern and jam it or not. So yes, improvements, but not quite to the level of what we're seeing with maybe some of the competition. Now, as I mentioned, TMG, it's now available on their website. We're seeing it's actually going up this week. There's like an upgrade package that's available, so those of you who already have a TMG, it's $499 to upgrade to the VPR version, which gives you a new VPR CPU as well as a new VPR head. Plus, once you send back your original TMG CPU, you get a $65 credit as well. And then, of course, if you don't have a TMG yet and you want to go ahead and buy it out of the gate, there's packages available with the new CPU and the new VPR head. So it's good to see some improvements from TMG, and I'm really glad that they're continuing to develop. It's still not on par with the ALP, but it is also priced less than the ALP. So I'm just glad personally to see more competition, and that's the latest as far as the TMG. Next, taking a look at TPX. They're the ones who do the motorcycle-specific laser jammer. And after the success of their motorcycle laser jammer, which I actually found worked pretty well, even against like some of the Dragoneye guns, they're actually wanting to release an automotive version of their jammer specifically for people who drive cars and SUVs. Now, there's a Kickstarter that's available to help them raise the funds to sell a laser jammer for cars. It doesn't look like it's going to be successful. It's nowhere close to getting to their goal, but I talked to them about it, and they said that even if they can't raise the funds with Kickstarter, they still plan on releasing it normally. They would just have to raise the funds in a more traditional way, and they're not going to be able to give initial Kickstarter people like a lower price out of the gate, but they do still plan on releasing an automotive version of their laser jammer as well. And then finally, the last thing to talk about, I want to talk about a quick update to a police radar gun, and specifically the new Decatur Genesis 3. This is an evolution of the Genesis 2. It's the same underlying hardware and whatnot, but it has a new display for the counting unit, and new antennas, and new wireless remote as well. So there's some kind of interface improvements for the police officers, but for us in terms of radar detector users, there's really no difference for us because the signals that it transmits, it's still the same 35.5 Ka-band signal. There's no changes there. So for us, it's still the same as far as detecting it, and I guess really the only main difference for us is things like, well, the new antennas have a black face instead of a white face for the Decatur Genesis 2, and the display looks different. So if you've learned to recognize radar guns on sight alone from the display and from the antennas, here's a new one to kind of add to your mental repertoire. But otherwise, it's going to be the same as far as radar detection and stuff. So anyway, that's just a quick run through as far as all the new radar detectors, new laser jammers, updates, and even things that we can expect going into 2020. So cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Again, additional information down in the video description for everything that I talk about, test results, where to update your detectors, where to read more about any of these things, all be down there. So awesome. Thanks so much. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.